Hey there, and welcome. When you think about massive, world-changing companies like Uber or Airbnb, you probably imagine some incredibly complex technology. But what if I told you the core idea behind them is actually shockingly simple? It all starts with one kind of strange number.
Take a look at this. 15. Just 15. What could that possibly mean? Well, this little number is actually the key that unlocks a multi-billion-dollar shift in how our entire economy works.
15 minutes. That's it. That is the average amount of time a power drill gets used in its entire lifetime. Think about that. You spend all this money on a tool, and for 99.9% of its life, it just sits in a garage collecting dust. This one simple, powerful observation sparked a huge question.
And this is that question. It's an idea that's often tied to one of Airbnb's founders, and it is the absolute foundation of what we now call the sharing economy. It's not about inventing brand new stuff, no. It's about finding the hidden value in the things we already have. And that leads to a pretty powerful thought.
Right? What if your car, which just sits in the driveway most of the day, could be making you money? Or that spare bedroom you never use? What if all that stuff could become an income stream instead of just, stuff? That's really where this whole thing gets started.
So this brings us to the actual business model at the heart of it all. It's this idea of taking those assets that are just sitting around, these idle assets, and turning them into cold, hard cash.
And here's the textbook definition. It's a system that lets you and me monetize things we own, but things we wouldn't normally think of as commercial products. It's not about selling your car outright. It's about selling a ride in your car. It's about renting out access, not ownership.
And this slide really nails the key difference. Think about it. In a traditional marketplace, like a department store, the whole point is to transfer ownership. You buy a lawnmower, it's yours, forever. But the sharing economy flips that script. It's all about temporary access. You're just paying to use the lawnmower for an afternoon, not to own it.
And once you see this pattern, you see it absolutely everywhere. Of course, there's Uber and Lyft, which turned every personal car into a potential taxi. There's Airbnb, turning a spare room into a hotel room. Getaround lets you rent your actual car out to people by the hour. And it's not even just physical stuff. Platforms like Udemy let you monetize your knowledge, and Vayable lets you monetize your time and creativity as a local guide.
So the big question is, why is this all blowing up now? People have owned cars and had spare rooms for decades. What changed? Well, it turns out there was a secret recipe, a kind of perfect storm of factors that made it all possible.
And it really just boils down to two key ingredients. First, you've got the technology. The smartphone, obviously, put a powerful computer and a marketplace right into everyone's pocket. It makes connecting people seamless. But the second ingredient, that might be even more important. It's a huge cultural shift in how we trust each other.
And this chart illustrates that point perfectly. Study after study shows that younger generations, especially millennials, are just generally more willing to trust strangers they meet online. The idea of hopping into a stranger's car or sleeping in their spare bedroom, it just isn't as weird to them. And without that baseline level of trust, this whole model completely falls apart.
But here's the thing. Not every asset is created equal. You can't just create a sharing platform for anything and expect it to work. For a marketplace to really take off, it has to hit this perfect balance of supply and demand. You can almost think of it like a Goldilocks principle.
Okay, let's look at this table. If an item is too common, like a toothbrush, well, everybody already has one, so there's no demand to rent one. On the other end of the spectrum, if an item is too rare, like some super specialized welding equipment, there aren't enough people who own it to create a reliable supply for renters. The magic happens in that just right zone. Things like cars and spare rooms. Enough people own them to create a healthy supply, but not everyone has one available right when they need it. That's the sweet spot.
Of course, when you have this much innovation happening this fast, it's not all smooth sailing. In fact, the very nature of this business model often puts it on a collision course with the way the world already works.
So here's the really crucial part. A huge piece of the puzzle, and a big reason these services can be cheaper, is that they allow regular people to act like mini businesses, like a taxi service or a hotel, but without having to follow all the complex and often expensive regulations that those traditional industries do. This is the really disruptive, and sometimes legally fuzzy, heart of the model.
And sometimes that break-the-rules approach just breaks. Let's take the cautionary tale of an app called Haystack. The need was crystal clear.
A study found that at any given time, 45% of cars in Brooklyn were just circling, looking for parking. The idea was brilliant. What if you could sell your public parking spot to someone nearby just as you're leaving? The reality? Well, in most cities, it's illegal to sell a public good like a parking spot. The business model was dead on arrival, and the company failed.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating question to wrap things up. These companies created billions of dollars in value by looking at the world and seeing what was possible if you just ignored the existing rulebook. So it makes you wonder, to find the next truly massive idea, do you first have to imagine a world where the old rules simply don't exist? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.